It must have taken a lot of bravery to go in and stab something the size of a mammoth time and time again.
It's really interesting to see what those Neanderthals were eating and potentially hunting, and they would have had to have been very robust to deal with that.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's a lifestyle that required incredible strength.
But there is something else when we look at these arm bones, because they're different side to side. They're asymmetrical.
Yeah, when you look at the arm bones, you can see really visually that the right is larger and more robust than the left.
So the question is, what were Neanderthals doing differently with their right arms compared with their left arms? George, can you help me out?
Well, there are a couple of things that we can try out that might offer some clues. Now, we've got a fine specimen of a hunter here. Now, Colin, he's wired up onto a machine. What are we hoping to show with this?
Well, what we're trying to do is test a theory that explains that asymmetry they were talking about. You need intensity and you need frequency to cause bone change. The prevailing theory is that when you spear thrust, that back arm, the right arm, provides the majority of the force, and the front is simply steering, somewhat like a snooker pool cue.
Okay.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to measure the muscle activity during spear thrusting. The key is that the muscles attach onto the bone and change their shape. It's one of the things that influences the bone structure.
Okay, so when our hunter here stabs prey, these electrodes here will be activated.
Exactly. Well, the muscles will be activated. It will measure the energy that it produces. What we're going to get him to do is do some spearing activities to measure the activity of the muscles that might give us clues as to how the bones are being influenced.
Okay, so you have to be a really fierce hunter.
We want some serious intensity, because this thing is either your dinner or your death. So get in a nice stance, and we're going to get 3 hard stabs. So go ahead. Nice. And again, and out. One more. One more time.
About that.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, perfect. You just have a seat over there. Ooh. Now, what we see here, exactly, is that you'd expect from the theory that the right has more activity than the left. And what we're seeing is exactly the opposite. This is the right, this is the left.
Wow.
Yeah, the left is far more
So it's completely the other way around.
Yeah, and the reason for that, we think, is that it's not simply like playing pool. It's much more that you have a full body flexing, the hips shift, the shoulders shift, and your arms go right into the target. The ground reaction force comes back along the spear, and the muscles of the left arm are taking the majority of the load. And as a result, they're far more active, which is the opposite way for what you'd expect for explaining what you see on the skeleton over there.
So how come the asymmetrical arm bones if the right arm is actually not doing as much work as the left?
It's a wonderful question. Neanderthals live in a cold climate. They needed to stay warmer than just their physiology would allow for. So clothing might have been part of the equation. To produce a hide, to take something like this, a skin, and produce a hide that you can construct clothing out of, takes a great deal of processing. In fact,
it has to be scraped and
exactly.
cleaned and
You're completely right. It takes approximately 8 hours per hide of scraping. That's a great deal of scraping. So if you remember, you need intensity and you need frequency to cause bone change.
How many hides would you need for one suit?
Perfect question. You need 5 to 6, and each individual needs a new suit per year.
Right, that's a lot of scraping.
Absolutely.
John, you're going to be scraping now.
Yeah. So what we want you to do is grab a stone tool. This is a side scraper. These are the types of things that are found predominantly in Neanderthal stone tool assemblages. So go ahead and give it a scrape for us. Perfect. And if you keep doing that, I'm going to move over to here. Again, this is the right shoulder. Yeah. This is the activity from the right shoulder, the one that's active. If this type of activity is intense enough and frequent enough to cause bone adaptation, then this could explain what we see.
And they would have been doing this for hours and hours and hours.
The explanation is that if one person was doing it for their family, they could remain busy for half a year of scraping. It might explain the right side dominance and the massive asymmetry you see in Neanderthals.
It's very clear. Alice, this might be the answer. It could be something as mundane as scraping hides all day.
I really love this idea. I love the fact that we think of Neanderthals as big game hunters, and yet here we are looking at them and saying, well, actually, what's really shaped their bones is not hunting, but making clothes.
Today, most people from outside Africa can trace up to 4% of their DNA back to Neanderthals.
What might that Neanderthal DNA mean for us today? What sort of effects might it be having in our genomes?
Well, it's very difficult to say, but I have some results from you two which can shed some light on it. So this is a gene on chromosome 16 called WFDC1, and it's controlling cell growth.
Yeah.
We don't know what difference it makes to have different copies of it.
So this is very early stages at the moment, but
Absolutely.
we're starting to understand the implications of having some Neanderthal genes in our genomes. And actually, we do know something about Neanderthal genes which is very interesting, and that's that we know that at least some Neanderthals had red hair, and that's very useful for Victor. So, catching up with Victor again.
Hello.
This is great. So we've actually got hair colour.
What's great about working in this nature is that it gives you the ability to test out different looks, different hair and different skin color before you commit.
This is grounded in science. Okay, it's looking quite artistic, but there's science at the base of it. And also the skin colour, I see you've done really pale skin.
Yeah.
So this is somebody who lived in a northern climate.
Right, much like us.
It's really starting to come together.
Now, there's one question I want to ask is, can we tell how this individual died?
It's a great question, and usually we can't. But in this case, the skeleton gives us some really interesting clues. On the outside of your bones is a membrane, and you can see here where it's roughened, that membrane was laying down new bone at around the time that this individual died. And it's at the distal end of the tibia. It's also in the distal femora.
And the key thing about this is that it's on both sides and it's symmetrical. And actually, that is pretty indicative of one particular type of disease, and it's called hypertrophic pulmonary osteoarthropathy. And it basically means...
Yeah, in English, please.
Okay, so it basically means you're laying down new bone, but you're doing it in such a way that we know that that's related to lung and sometimes heart disease. But it makes it very probable that this individual had either a bad lung infection or lung cancer.
Yeah. It's one of the very rare cases where we have a fossil where we can actually make some indication of the cause of death.
So from these few bones we started with, we've established that Neanderthals were strong, adaptable, and possibly had an emergent culture and budding language. They were well suited to their Ice Age home, and given they were such a successful species, they survived for 350,000 years. Yet when the crunch came, they may simply have been unlucky.
It is very sad that they're no longer with us, but we have been able to bring Lapharasie-1 back to life with the help of all of this scientific evidence and our amazing model makers.
We started with a composite skeleton based on Lapharasie-1 and other finds. And over 2 months, we've carefully been reconstructing him. With extraordinary attention to detail, the muscles were painstakingly added to rebuild his body. His face was recreated using forensic techniques. Then the skin and hair were added. Now he's finished, and he's here.
So should we go and have a look?
I can't wait.
Yeah.
This is so exciting. We have literally never seen this before. Under a sheet. Go on in, Victor. Wow.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Wow, his eyes sparkle.
He's really lifelike.
Yeah.
The nose is really prominent,
That is
isn't
just
it?
fantastic.
Still trying to get my head around the fact that this guy is in my ancestry and not that far back. John, what do you think?
Give me a break. You looked like twins.
Isn't he wonderful? I mean, this just looks like a living, breathing Neanderthal. I'm slightly freaked out by him, actually. I just think he's going to start moving.
That is unbelievable. It's uncanny. It's
John,
spooky.
what do you reckon?
You know, it's just got this sort of humanizing effect to put the flesh on, and it's the challenge is to make something that's different from us look different, when in fact the details point to great similarity.
Oh, I can just imagine him striding off. What do you reckon? Is he muscly enough?
Yeah, he's got to be, but it's really impressive, isn't it?
It's a case where focusing on bone doesn't give the whole picture.
Yeah. Victor, such a good job. He's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In the heat of the African savanna, keeping cool is crucial to survival. Many animals insulate themselves against the harmful exposure of the sun with a protective layer of hair. They rest at the hottest times of the day to avoid overheating. But that means they have less time to travel and hunt. If Homo erectus was out running in the heat of the day, what stopped them overheating? Could this be the time that our early ancestors lost their hair?
Well, I'm with Professor Peter Wheeler from John Moores University. Would Homo erectus have been hairy?
That's something we don't know. But what we can say is that there are good reasons to think that it would have been advantageous for Homo erectus not to have been hairy.
Tell me more, Peter.
Yes, we've got these two volunteers who are not too dissimilar in physique from what the Narukatomi boy might have looked like had he survived to be an adult. And they're identical twins, and they've trained to a similar level of fitness.
And we've had them standing under these heat lamps which emulate the African sun.
One of the advantages of retaining body hair is that it acts as a shield. It prevents a lot of the heat from the sun getting through to the body. And we've selected clothing which is similar in its thermal properties to that of the hair of living primates.
So in essence, we have a hairless hominid and a hairy one.
Yes. Now, although the surface of the hair does get very hot, in this case clothing, because it's insulating, most of it will be reflected and re-radiated back to the environment. It's the lighter colours that are the warmest areas. The surfaces on the naked skin volunteer are hot. They are the skin being hot itself, therefore the heat is being absorbed directly by the body.
So when animals are standing still, their fur keeps them cool by reflecting heat away from the body. But John's bare skin is absorbing it, so he is getting hotter. Well, let's see how you fare when you start to run. We'll turn on fans to create a similar airflow to when you're actually running. We have a healthcare professional here. If you don't feel comfortable, you stop at any time, okay? Start running. Now, our volunteers have been really working up a sweat on these treadmills, so now I want to see who's keeping their cool.
How are you feeling? Oh, insulate from it? Tough?
Yeah.
And our naked skinned human? Okay. Well,
So
clearly,
he could keep going.
yeah, he's obviously dissipating the heat load that his muscles are producing much more easily. And there are two distinct reasons why he's able to do this. The loss of his body hair means that heat can flow from his body more easily out into the environment. The second advantage is the loss of body hair makes sweating much more effective. When the sweat is secreted onto the skin surface, the increased airflow over the skin means that sweat is evaporated at a greater rate.
I'm worried about you guys. I think you should switch the machines off now, because I'm worried that you're about to have heat stroke. Now, hold up your shirt there. Look at that. Now, all that heat has been trapped inside. His core, his insides are really heating up. John on the left there is not nearly as hot underneath. So the advantages are quite clear.
The advantages are very clear, particularly during activity, either through long-distance persistence walking through the heat of the tropical day or short bursts of intense activity, such as our volunteers have done here.
There's one other problem with exposed skin in the sun, of course, that you would have to have dark skin protected by melanin. And what about hair on the head?
Well, one of the reasons we think hair is retained on the head is that it's actually shielding those areas of the body in a biped which are most exposed to the strongest fluxes of solar radiation
And it protects the brain.
when the sun is overhead.
And it protects your
it's
brain
shielding
from,
the brain
from overheating. Stephen, how do you feel?
It was really hard.
That was really hard.
Yeah. Good.
You could have kept going,
Yeah.
I reckon.
Under the savannah sun, Narukatomi boy could only run during the day if he could keep cool. Sweating is the most efficient way of losing heat. And to do that, he would have needed very little body hair.
This is really interesting, and I find it really intriguing that we could be looking at the point in our story where our ancestors lost their fur.
If we look at the shape of the rib cage is not as broad or wide or flared out as some of our earlier ancestors. And so what that means is that the space in between the pelvis and the diaphragm, where our guts live, seems to be a smaller volume. We have smaller guts.
Which suggests that he was eating better quality food.
The shorter the gut, the better quality of the food.
So meat could be an explanation for that, but there could be another explanation as well, why guts and teeth are getting smaller. It could have been that these guys were cooking their food.
It's controversial because until recently it was thought humans didn't control fire until around 400,000 years ago. But new chemical analysis techniques may have just put a match to all that.
Cooking with fire is a uniquely human behaviour. Today, Homo sapiens are the only species to do it, but that hasn't always been the case. In Williamstown, Massachusetts, Dr. Ann Skinner has been analysing tiny fragments of ancient animal bones that have been burned. They were found at a site used by Homo erectus, and Ann made an extraordinary discovery. Using a technique known as electron spin resonance, she can analyse changes in bone protein. These reveal what temperature the bones were burned at. Natural fires from the time of Homo erectus would have been grass fires that burn at 300 degrees Celsius. But man-made fires, created in a hearth, reach much higher temperatures.
So if I have bones that are heated above 300, and especially above 400 to give us a little leeway here, then I can be sure that they were not heated in a grass fire, and hence they have to have been heated in a fire constructed by hominids.
Anne used her technique to analyse burnt fragments of antelope bones found in Svartkrans cave in South Africa. This was a cave where Homo erectus remains had also been found. Remarkably, she found that the bones had burned at 350 degrees Celsius. Anne believes this shows they must have been burnt in a hearth.
I can show that these bones were burnt in a fire that must have been created and controlled at the cave, and that dates to somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million years, which is older than any other site that has ever been found.
Scientists believe that the only species to have the mental ability to use fire at this time was Homo erectus.
The idea that these entities had the ability to even conceive that they might control their environment, rather than just letting the environment control them. I mean, instead of seeing a burning bush and running in the other direction, to conceptually say, hey, we could use that. Even if we weren't cooking, we could use it to scare away the leopards. We could use it to keep warm. Just thinking that there's something that you could use in your environment takes more effort than you might think.
Anne's findings have rewritten the timeline on Homo erectus's ability to harness fire. Evolutionary biologist Dr. Rachel Carmody has studied the research. She believes that the early use of fire could even have accelerated their development.
This kind of work is really showing us that humans were controlling fire and were possibly using it for things like cooking very early on in human evolution.
Cooked food means a more varied, higher energy diet. This reduces the workload for the gut and leaves calories spare for the rest of the body. A fifth of the calories we consume are used to fuel our brains, and there's a theory that a switch to cooked food is one of the things that encouraged an increase in brain size.
What we see at this point in human evolution is the beginning of a trade-off, where gut size gets smaller, so you save energy by having a smaller gut. But humans seem to have been able to reallocate that saved energy toward fueling a larger brain.
So is there a link between a better diet and growing bigger brains?
I find this really intriguing and slightly unsettling, because for me this is evolution turned on its head. Because we're saying that we are saving some energy somewhere, so that means we can grow a bit of ourselves bigger. George, what do you think?
Chimpanzee spends 47% of his time chewing and eating and processing food, whereas humans only spend 4.7%. So you've got all this extra time and energy to do something with it. Why not cooking?
Now this is a human walking along, and we can see that we walk with a nice straight leg, and one of the really key bits of anatomy is up here. These are the abductor muscles on the outside of your hip joint, and they stop your hips swinging from side to side as you're walking. Robin, I think that's a chimp over your end, isn't it?
Yep.
Completely different gait, so that's very bent hip, bent knee.
Well, really what you can see in the chimpanzee is the strong flexion of the knee, bringing all of the force of the body down behind the knee and in front of the foot. Now this is is actually continually flexing the knee joint, and this is what makes that sort of walking so inefficient.
That looks very inefficient with this sort of rotating hip. It's very hard to do.
Well, one of the reasons is if you stand in this sort of posture, gravity's continuing to flex your knee, and your muscles in front of the thigh work harder and harder and harder to stop you bending more and more, and it becomes very tiring.
It's very tiring, and your knees start to shake.
Yes.
Oh, so it's much more efficient to actually straighten your legs. It's more efficient to stand that way, and it's more efficient to walk this way as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so who's this in the middle then?
That's a Lucy.
So this is how Lucy would have walked.
I would say a little bit more straight leg than that too. I think that's
even more straight.
Even more straight leg than that.
She's
There's
looking.
a slight swing on the hips, isn't there? There's a little.
Yes, you've got basically a broader hip than we would have had.
I think again we have to emphasise the fact that chimpanzees are not our ancestors, and we're using them as a comparison. But it seems that what we've got here in Australopithecus afarensis is something which is almost halfway between a very chimpanzee-like way of walking and a modern human way of walking. Well, looking at the anatomy of Lucy's feet, knees and pelvis, it suggests she's spending lots of time walking on the ground. But some new research has been looking at another bit of her anatomy, her hands, and this may shed some light on how much she was using them for climbing.
It may seem surprising, but the way we use our hands in climbing a tree or gripping a tool is recorded in our wrist bones. Powell Cotton House in southern England is one of the most important primate study centres in the world. Our ancient ancestors spent more time in the trees than we do. But new research conducted here is beginning to shed light on when they decided to trade life in the trees for life on the ground. Paleoanthropologist Professor Gabrielle Macho has been studying the wrist bones of modern chimpanzees and humans and comparing them with wrist bones from Lucy's species, Australopithecus afarensis.
We have been looking at the capitate. It's the biggest bone of the wrist, and it's sitting right in the middle here, and it's along the main load transfer from the middle finger to the upper arm.
Gabrielle has been putting capitate bones into a CT scanner to reveal the internal structure of trabecular bone.
In a little bone like this, you get a very complex arrangement of trabecular bone. And it's no coincidence, it's also called the spongy bone.
Having made CT scans of capitate bones, Gabrielle applied the same computer modelling that aircraft manufacturers use to analyse stress in the wings of aeroplanes. This showed where the spongy bone had been reinforced to cope with the forces applied to them.
The difference between the two bones is quite striking. In the chimpanzee, you see the red loads travel towards the left side, and this is the side where you have your little finger. In modern humans, see it quite nicely, it is traveling towards the thumb side.
So chimps show evidence of reinforcement on the little finger side of this bone, because that is where the loading is greatest when they climb trees. But in humans, who use their thumbs far more, the loading is on the thumb side of the bone. This technique could reveal how much time ancient species spent in the trees. Next, Gabrielle looked at capitates from Australopithecus afarensis, the same species as Lucy. She also analysed capitates from another slightly older species, Australopithecus anamensis. Her findings suggest that a dramatic change was taking place.
The older one, Australopithecus anamensis, behaves more like a chimpanzee. So you have the load transfer towards the little finger, and this is what you expect if you're moving up a tree, if you're climbing, whereas the later Australopithecus afarensis has more of a human-like pattern. So it definitely used its thumb much more regularly than the older specimens, and it is maybe some indication that they have largely abandoned an arboreal lifestyle, so they have come to the ground.
So why did our ancient ancestors choose to walk upright? The forests were retreating, but out on the savannah, they were easy prey. But walking meant they could travel further to find food, and it freed up their hands. Walking on two legs clearly has advantages, but it comes at a price, and it's one we are still paying today.
Well, over here we have Professor Karen Rosenberg from the University of Delaware, and she's been studying this part of Lucy's anatomy very carefully. So this is a modern human pelvis, and it's a completely different shape from the chimpanzee.
Completely different. And it's completely different because of the way that we walk. As bipeds, we've had to modify our pelvis completely in order to walk on two legs, which a chimpanzee doesn't do.
I mean, this is like a blade. I mean, in fact, we do call this the iliac blade,
Yes,
don't we?
exactly.
And in us, it's formed a kind of basin shape.
Right.
It's a completely different shape.
Completely different. And the birth canal is completely different as well. In humans, the birth canal, which is here, is wide at the top,
yeah,
and then long at the midplane in the middle, and then approximately round at the outlet. And chimpanzees are long in all dimensions, so it's quite a different shape.
So do chimpanzees have any problems giving birth?
Apparently not. Apparently they have a pretty easy time. The baby's head is much smaller than the birth canal, and it seems to go through in a pretty straightforward way without a lot of difficulty.
So do you think that the changes to the human pelvis that have come about because of this adaptation to walking on two legs have had a knock-on effect for childbirth?
Huge effect for childbirth, and not just the modifications for locomotion, but it's because we give birth to babies with large brains.
Yeah, that's a bad bit of design, isn't it?
It is a very bad design.
Okay, so babies with big brains would have come along a bit later,
yes, much later,
after Lucy's kind. But over here, we've got reconstructed Lucy's pelvis, because I think it's very useful to be able to see the pelvis in the round with the sacrum at the back as well. Now, first of all, it's very, very tiny, but I think if I put it in the middle there, I mean, I think that looks much more like a modern human pelvis than it does like a chimpanzee. In fact, it looks almost nothing like a chimpanzee pelvis.
Absolutely. The modifications that happened because we walk on two legs had taken place, obviously, by the time of Lucy, and so the pelvis looks much more similar to a modern human, but it doesn't look exactly like a modern human. And that's because the birth canal didn't have to give birth to a large brain baby.
So do you think Lucy would have still been able to give birth relatively easily then?
Relatively easily, but differently than in a chimpanzee.
So how have you been able to work that out?
Well,
and how differently?
Well, quite differently. So if we look at the way that modern humans give birth...
So this is a newborn baby,
this is
by the way.
a model of a newborn baby. In modern humans, the fit between the baby's head and the baby's shoulders and the birth canal is quite tight, as lots of people know from personal experience.
Yes, I know it from personal experience.
So the baby's head typically enters the birth canal facing to the side, like this.
Yeah.
But then it usually gets stuck, and so it usually turns, rotates 90 degrees, and emerges like this, so that the back of the baby's head is facing to the front of the mother's body. So the mother can't easily reach down and clear the baby's breathing passage or move the umbilical cord if it's around the neck. Those are things that in other animals the mother can do for herself, but it's more difficult for humans to do. So humans are typically, almost always, born with another person helping.
So with Lucy's pelvis then, why do you think it would have been difficult to get a baby out through Lucy's pelvis? Because her babies would have had much smaller heads than ours.
Yes, but Lucy's pelvis, and Lucy's birth canal in particular, is different from both modern humans and a chimpanzee. It's like a modern human in that it's wide from side to side, but then it has that shape all the way through.
So her baby wouldn't have twisted around in the same way?
Exactly, and not only didn't need to turn and twist, it probably couldn't turn and twist.
So this is really interesting. It means that in order to stand and walk upright on two legs, Lucy was paying a price. She was paying a price in that it made childbirth more difficult.
Absolutely.